But now we'll continue to our keynote presentations, which will offer perspectives from both international policy and research. Please welcome our keynote speakers, Leng, Program Coordinator for Cultural Policies and Development at UNESCO. And after Kay, we have Szilvia Németh, Managing Director and Researcher at the T-Tudok Center for Knowledge Management and Educational Research, and the leader of the Creative Learning and Education Foundation in Budapest, Hungary. Together we will reflect on the implementation of the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education. So, Kay, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Well, maybe as the established practice of this seminar so far, I would first describe myself, my experience and my pronouns. I'm wearing a jacket with appears to me a Scottish tartan fabric, checker, and white shirt with a green tie, and dark green pants and black boots. I would refer myself as he and him, though in my own culture, I'm Chinese by origin, we do not differentiate in terms of pronunciation between he, him, she, her. So, and me, myself, I'm from UNESCO. I work in the Division of Cultural Policies and Development. This is a division that works on cultural policies and also in terms of how culture to support the development of other public policy domains. That's why we have embarked since 2.5 years the work on culture and arts education. Hence, the framework and its implementation are all under our mandate. So at the beginning, I would like to give a few words of gratitude. Thanks a lot to the Finnish Ministry of Education and Culture, and also Kana for inviting me to be here for this important gathering to jointly reflect on this topic that is dear to our heart. I also want to join you again to thank our young people just now who give us this important reflection, which reminds us of the power of culture and arts education, and embodiment of the principle that every voice matters, and that culture participation is not a privilege, but it is a right. Today we are here to strengthen how we can to reflect on how we can strengthen culture and arts education. It is one with the power to transform how we learn, how we connect with each other, and how we imagine the world as we build together. At the outset of my presentation, I want to also recognize the diverse profiles of the audience in the room. I try to include elements that would speak with everyone, or at least at times flesh out the concerns of the policymakers, the actions by managers of the cultural institutions, and the aspiration of the communities. So to structure my presentation today, I will focus on 3 dimensions. First, why culture and arts education matters now. I'm sure all of you are convinced and live it by practice. So my words are not going to repeat why it is so important, but rather I'm going to speak about some existing and renewed contexts at the international level. Secondly, how the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education and its implementation guidance respond to this urgency. In other words, what our governments have concretely committed to as the framework was a negotiation between UNESCO member states and adopted by their cultural and education ministers. I will do so through revisiting the strategic goals of the framework and flesh out step-by-step methodology of the implementation guidance. Thirdly, I want to speak a bit on the opportunities lie ahead of us, particularly through our engagement in strengthening governance, policies, and partnership. This part, I'm afraid I cannot really do it alone. I hope through our breakout group discussions later on that are meant to be participatory and interactive, we will have some concrete proposals. Also, as Hannah just now gave us this hope of the substantial and inspiring afternoon, and perhaps even some statement of joint actions as we move forward. So let me start with the first question: why culture and arts education matter now more than ever? If we have my education sector colleagues from UNESCO in the room today, they will tell us our education systems are under unprecedented stress. And the world, as we see now, has recognized that traditional approaches alone are insufficient to meet the challenges of our time. The 2022 Transforming Education Summit marked a pivotal moment when world leaders acknowledged the education system worldwide were failing to deliver on their promise of quality, inclusive, and relevant learning for all. The summit's conclusions were stark. We need fundamental changes in how we conceptualize, design, and deliver education. The crisis was not merely about access to schooling. It was about the very effectiveness and relevance of educational approaches that too often leaving learners disengaged, communities disconnected, and society unprepared for complex contemporary challenges. So this recognition of educational system stress coincided with growing understanding that culture and the arts provide essential solutions to educational challenges. When learners struggle with abstract concepts in mathematics, engagement with geometric patterns of crafts can unlock understanding. When history lessons feel distant and irrelevant, connection with oral traditions and living heritage creates meaningful learning. When students lack motivation and agency, creative expression provides pathway to voice and empowerment. The examples can go on and on. So the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education that we discussed today did not emerge in a vacuum. It represents a decisive response to urgent calls from the global community for education transformation. The policy shift we are witnessing is not coincidental either. It is a strategic recognition that culture and arts education offer proven tools for addressing educational effectiveness, learning engagement, and social cohesion. This shift was powerfully demonstrated in the World Conference on Cultural Policies and Development in Mexico City in 2022, and once again this year in Barcelona 2025 Mondial Conference, we had a dedicated session of gathering cultural and education ministers to jointly debate on how we can make culture and arts education an integral part to our public policy. Despite the framework's adoption in February 2024, it is not really a new tool developed by UNESCO. Why am I saying this? I guess the presentation is correct. Because it represents a systematic consolidation of UNESCO cultural conventions and recommendations and experience of decades of their operationalization by UNESCO member states, including all European countries. For example, the 1972 World Heritage Convention, ratified by every European country, established clear educational obligations. Article 27 requires state parties to endeavor by all appropriate means, and in particular by educational and information programs, to strengthen appreciation and respect by their peoples of the cultural and natural heritage. This is not really optional enhancement, but a binding legal obligation that most educational systems have yet to fulfill systematically. The 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage goes further, requiring state parties to ensure recognition of, respect for, and enhancement of the intangible cultural heritage in society, in particular through educational awareness raising and information programs. Article 14 of the 2003 Convention specifically mandates educational programs that ensure heritage transmission to younger generations. So we ask ourselves, How many of our formal education systems have already integrated this obligation in their core curriculum? Similarly, the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of Diversity of Cultural Expressions established obligations for leveraging education to promote cultural diversity and intercultural dialogue. The 2001 Convention on the Protection of Underwater Heritage and 1970 Convention on Illicit Trafficking established equally clear educational mandates to raise awareness and heritage protection. So I'm listing all these legal instruments here to say that this is a legal obligation of all the countries, even before we have the framework. So when you do your policy advocacy, you could also speak to your policymakers that beyond the framework, you have already rectified this international obligation. So culture and arts education encompassing heritage, creativity is part of the work that your parliaments, your governments have already ratified. So with this broad understanding of culture and arts education, which encompasses heritage from natural to intangible and to built and creative expressions, I come to the second part of my presentation, which is on the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education itself. The framework is the outcome of one of the most inclusive consultation on culture and arts education following the call of the Executive Board in April 2021. We embarked on a 2-year process that engaged over 2,300 stakeholders worldwide, including ministers, educators, artists, managers of cultural institutions, and most importantly, learners themselves. This culminated in February 2024 at the UNESCO World Conference on Culture and Arts Education in Abu Dhabi, where ministers for culture and education from across the globe adopted the framework as a shared commitment. I put these 2 QR codes on the screen. I think many of you are already quite familiar with the framework. It was adopted almost 2 years ago already, so I guess it has been rather known, though the implementation guidance of the framework was developed in the past, I would say, 18 months. And it was just launched last week in Barcelona, so it's about 1 week ago. So you could also consult this document online, and hope it will be useful for you as it guides your implementation. So what I'm going to do here is I will still speak very quickly on the framework, even though it has been a document online and of public knowledge for quite some time. And then, because I find recalling especially the strategic goals of this framework could be very useful to orient our work, our discussion, and our shared commitment later on. And then I will spend more time on the implementation guidance, on its step-by-step methodology. So about the framework lays out 5 strategy goals. Strategy goals 1 focuses on access, inclusion, and equity through culture and arts education. The goal recognizes that access is the critical foundation for exercising both the right to education and the cultural rights. We cannot speak of empowerment if learners cannot even access. This means addressing all obstacles, from limited infrastructure and resources to vulnerability and exclusion based on any grounds including race, color, gender, age, language, religious ability, and economic conditions. Today, the true accessibility is also increasingly challenged by the digital divide that leaves many communities behind. Strategic goal 2 emphasizes contextual, quality, lifelong, and life-wide learning in and through culture and arts education. This goal recognizes that empowering education must be responsive to global challenges while rooted in local contexts. It means integrating indigenous knowledge systems locate living cultural heritage, local living cultural heritage, and community expressions into formal curricula. Exactly like what I just said right now, what the 2003 conventions requires. Strategic Goal 3 develops appreciation of cultural diversity and capacity for critical engagement. This goal equips learners with knowledge, skills, values, attitude, and agencies to promote social changes and challenges forms of cultural instrumentalization and harmful social norms. Strategic Goal 4 focuses on skills to shape resilient, just, and sustainable futures. This goal leverages culture and arts education to nurture creativity, critical thinking, and innovation as fundamental competencies for addressing sustainability challenges while supporting employment in cultural and creative industries. This connects directly to empowerment by providing pathways to meaningful work and community engagement. Strategic Goal 5 emphasizes institutionalization and valorization of culture and arts education ecosystems. This goal ensures that transformative practices become embedded in policies, strategies, and programs at all levels, creating sustainable change rather than temporary projects. It recognizes that culture and arts education is an ecosystem comprised of diverse elements that relate and interact with various local and cultural social contexts. Since the adoption of the framework in February 2024, we at the UNESCO Secretariat have worked on a detailed implementation guidance that serves as a bridge between global vision and local action. The implementation guidance that was launched last week in Barcelona is structured around 5 main sections that unpack the framework systematically. The section 1 explains the framework structure, its guiding principles, objectives, and again, the strategy goals just now I mentioned, as well as the implementation modalities. Section 2 expands on each strategy goal with actionable recommendations for policymakers and practical tips for practitioners, including guiding questions for reflection and assessment. Section 3 elaborates on 8 implementation modalities as enabling conditions. Section 4 proposes a step-by-step methodology for building transformative ecosystems. Section 5, last but not least, focused on monitoring, follow-up, and reviewing mechanisms. So when it comes to implementation and step-by-step route to transformation, the implementation guidance could be read as a concrete 8-step methodology for building transformative culture and arts education ecosystems to help you design and implement strategies and policies in relation to culture and arts education. And let's spend a bit more time on these 8 steps. So step 1, conducting baseline assessments, understanding where you start from. Transformation begins with truth-telling. We need to chart a course to our destination first by first honestly acknowledging where we currently stand. This first step involves conducting comprehensive baseline assessments that map not just the programs and policies, but the living reality how culture and arts education currently functions or fails to function in your context. This means asking penetrating questions that go beyond surface-level program inventories. Who are these young people, like those who we just now witnessed from the Volve Film Club? And who are thriving in your systems and who remain invisible and marginalized? Which communities have rich cultural assets and resources that would remain undertapped and untapped by formal education? I'm just told I have 5 minutes left, right? Okay, I will go faster. Step 2 is to prioritize issues and make strategic choices. While you may have clear understanding of current realities after the baseline studies, you can now make strategic choices, but only on those that within your resources and functions. Consider which entry points offer the greatest leverage for system transformation. And the key is to identify where success is possible and where the success can create ripple effects throughout the broad ecosystem. Think strategically about which victory will inspire others, which partnership will unlock additional resources, and which innovation will capture attention and support from policymakers and communities alike. Step 3, establishing contextual goals, adapting global vision to local reality. For example, in rural Finnish communities, this might mean leveraging the country's extensive network of heritage sites and natural areas to create place-based learning opportunities that connect students with the environmental awareness and also Sami cultural traditions. In urban European contexts, on the other hand, perhaps it means that involve in transforming community centers and cultural institutions into vibrant learning hubs that celebrate the linguistic and cultural diversity, that even including migrations that brought to your cities. Step 4, I'm going very fast. I think I'm skipping quite a few things, but we will have time later on to explain further. Step 4 engages stakeholders, building coalition for change. Transformation cannot be imposed from above or achieved in isolation. These steps involve building broad, inclusive coalition necessary for sustainable change. The stakeholder engagement process itself becomes a model for the collaborative and co-creative approaches. I heard just now many of us panelists have talked about co-creation process. This is exactly what the framework promotes. When education and cultural ministries work together to design implementation strategies, they demonstrate the intersectoral cooperation that makes transformation possible, and we will also need to involve community representatives, including our managers of cultural institutions, higher education institutions, indigenous peoples, heritage barriers, and make our policy truly grounded in authentic cultural expressions and community priorities. Step 5, implementing with adequate resources. I think we are all challenged with that, and I think we also need our policy makers to help us, so we can leave this part maybe aside. Step 6 is periodic monitoring. Stay connected to the impact and learning. We all know that monitoring and data collection is very important. Just now, our panelists also spoke about the importance of having quantitative and qualitative data. I think these both are very, very important. They also provide very important narratives for us to go back to the policymakers to do our advocacy. Step 7, as our work, as we implement initiative policies, they cannot always be success. We might face with setbacks. It might be a spiral going up. I mean, sometimes sidetracked. So we will always need to make recurrent adjustments and embrace adaptive learning. And this is just true to every work that we do, not just on culture and arts education. The key is to create organizational cultures and policy frameworks that support learning adaptation rather than rigid adherence to original plans. Step 8, last but not least, disseminating achievement and promote knowledge sharing. I think that's also why it's very important we are gathering here. As we learn, we are also could learn from our cross-border experiences, and we can also, through some programs, for example, Move Europe program, to benefit from artists, arts educators from other countries so that we can do knowledge and also resource sharing. This, I think, later on we will also be able to discuss during our breakout group sessions. So I think I might need 3 more minutes, if I may, before I pass on the floor to my collaborator, Szilvia, who will speak more concretely national frameworks on implementation in the national context. But I still wish to stress that UNESCO Framework and, for Culture and Arts Education and its implementation guidance represent only the beginning of our shared journey, not a final destination. The framework provides the compass and the roadmap, but we must each navigate in our own unique terrain. Each of our nations face specific challenges that demand tailored response. Rural depopulation in some regions, urban inequality in others, migration flows that bring both opportunities and integration challenges. Environmental pressures, not to say the least, have been we are grappling with, and as well as the digital divide that exists even at the doorstep of the European countries. Moreover, we live in a rapid changing context where technological innovation, social transformation, and global interconnectedness create new challenges as quickly as we develop solutions to existing ones. So this dynamic reality demands that we continue our dialogue, deepen our learning from one another, and expand our cooperation across borders and sectors. Perhaps it is time to develop more systematic regional and sub-regional mechanisms for policy sharing and mutual support. Ones that bring together decision makers from both culture and education ministers, culture and education sectors, cultural and educational institutions that serve as a laboratory for innovation, and civil societies who are already doing all the good work and transformative work in our communities. Such mechanism could provide the ongoing support, knowledge exchange, and adaptive capacity that implement the framework that the framework implementation truly requires. So I will stop here. I went very fast. I hope I made a clear presentation, and I look forward to later on the opportunity to further exchange with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ke. And now I'd like to invite Szilvia Németh to the stage. And now you can stand up and give a standing ovation. So, you know, it's healthy to stand up every now and then.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a researcher, as you see, but I would like to highlight two things that in my presentation I will try to summarize the OECD concept, and because I've been working since 2016 as a kind of national coordinator for fostering creativity and critical thinking in education for OECD. And I would like to also highlight and show you this logo on the first slide, which says that not only Oulu but also Trenčín will be the European Capital of Culture in the same year, and I'm leading one of the creative partnerships programs in Trenčín, so I'm extremely happy that I can be here in Oulu. As in the previous presentation, Leng was describing the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education. I would like to, if it works, yes, I would like to highlight or pick two important things here. The first is that creativity and critical thinking is always appearing in this UNESCO framework, and I tried to show you two examples for this, and I would like to say that the second one, for example, that educational approaches, pedagogies and tools should empower learners to use art for social change, express freely and act with social responsibility, collaboration and creativity. But why is it so important? So why do creativity and critical thinking matter? And why do we speak a lot about these two things in the last years and in our age? This is because, and this sentence which is here, that 60% of the jobs kids in school today will do have not yet been invented. It is coming from 1970, and this 1970 sentence was made by Alice Paul Torrance, the first person who was creating a test on creative learning and creative thinking. I think this is very up to date today too, and it shows that how difficult for teachers and educators nowadays is to prepare young people and students, pupils for the labor market. Especially because the duty or task of the school is not to create job seekers, but somehow nurture and develop job creators. How would it be possible to do that? Of course, if the school, and not just in Europe, but globally, would prepare children and young people to be successful in the 21st century. And what I just show you, this is a list of so-called 21st century skills, that thinking imaginatively, transferring knowledge to new settings, spotting surprises, being resilient, reflecting critically, all ideas appearing in the UNESCO Framework as well. But these are those skills which are extremely needed in the nowadays education. Just to show you one slide about from the Future of Jobs report, it says that creative thinking is in the top 10 skills demand in 2025, but all others, but being resilient, creative thinking, and social leadership and social influence, flexibility, also are in the top 10. And curiosity and lifelong learning still, which has a kind of permanent role or place in this report every year. So, what skills should education systems foster? Of course, there are not just technical skills, not just know what and know how, but also behavioral skills, social skills, creativity, and critical thinking skills. And there are some education systems which not just the population, but also the governments and policy people, they say that this is more important, that schools in our country teach to be creative and think independently than just to focus on basic academic skills and encourage discipline. If we go on, I would like to show you this important slide. It is coming from PISA 2022. And this was a pilot, and Finland is also there visible. And it shows that 15-year-olds tend to report lower creativity than 10-year-olds. And in some countries, this is not the case, but in most of the pilot countries, it was the case. So this is a standardized difference between 10 and 15-year-olds, and it was an average across sites. So it is quite important message for the contemporary or nowadays education, that if we go from grade to grade, from year to year, then our creativity and creative thinking is not increasing, but we are getting less and less creative. It has really important implications for our achievement as well. So if you look at this graph behind me, you see that if students believe that they can change their intelligence, or they can change their executive functions, they can change their behavior at school, then their grades are getting better. And our aim is somehow to support education systems, support schools, support children to get into that field which is just there above, and which would show that creativity matters. What can we do? I think that not just on the educational system level, but also on the school level, our common aim is to go to that part, to have schools with high test scores and having independent, active, motivated pupils who would be really actors in a democratic way. So usually schools belong to these two types, that there are low-performing schools with unmotivated children, schools with high test scores but not so motivated children, and of course there are some schools which are outstanding. With cultural and artistic activities we try to support these children, but what we do and what we think in creative education, that it is much more important to do it at a school level. So we try to use this type of creative learning and creative education in the schools themselves. Our pedagogy is called a high-functioning classroom, and it is, with other words, we can say that the first step in the institutional level is to create so-called creative learning environments, which somehow support the notion of visibility of processes, of having a kind of a self as a learning resource, having a flexible organizational time, authentic activities, with challenging teacher roles, and with a continuous reflection. If we have this environment, then we can also articulate a common international language on creativity and critical thinking, and OECD supports a development of a bank of pedagogical resources and activities in order to support teachers and educators in this journey. Also develops a professional development plan and example of developmental plans, and developed and piloted evaluation instruments as well. What is this really about? We would say that this is about not just about the creativity of young people, but also raising their aspirations and achievements, supporting teachers to develop creative approaches to teaching, and supporting schools to deal with their real challenges and developmental needs. Of course, not alone, but in a partnership between teachers, creative practitioners, pupils, and parents. Meaning creative practitioners, we say that these are artists, these are so creative people working in creative industries and having a background with active cultural background. What kind of projects can we think about? And this is based just on our experience, that we use this type of creative educational methodology for highlighting pupils' voice, but also to teach core science concepts, to develop the literacy skills of children, or engaging parents in a school life. We try to have a kind of experimenting creative learning environment, which where children can take risks and have a kind of discovery images. This is if a school would like to use this creative methodology, we ask them to somehow define the issue or a problem, to embed it into the curriculum, to find the appropriate creative practice, and this thing can develop the creative skills of children in the manner of a so-called creative learning space. So this, we think that this is, and not just think, but this is absolutely evaluated, that if there is a high system, then the students' high engagement is guaranteed. So it can be, and answering the question of this session, that how can we provide education or engagement for all. So this is the model which we use for that the high engagement is based on this type of model, what I'm showing you. Of course, the definition of creativity, what we use is a small c creativity coming from Anna Kraft definition, who in the beginning of the 21st century, she was writing many articles about it, that this is not a question of big C, but this is not a special gift, it's not an end product, but this is something which exists in all of us, and education through art programs aim to unlock and nurture the creativity of pupils, teachers, and creative professionals. We use, and OECD uses this framework, which is based on Bill Lucas' work, and this is a 5-element what we try to support in children and teachers, and this is somehow pedagogically creativity can be captured by this model. So a person is creative if he or she is imaginative, inquisitive, persistent, disciplined, and collaborative. All these main blocks, they have different subcategories or subgroups. For example, to be inquisitive, it means that we are able to ask questions, we can investigate on different issues, and we are able to challenge assumptions. Also, the persistence, or which is important, that to be imaginative, if a school allows children to play with possibilities or making connections, using intuitions, then supports or nurtures their creativity. Psychologically, we usually say that this is creativity, but pedagogically, all these 5 blocks together create a kind of creative person. The last one is being collaborative. This is also refers back to this UNESCO framework as a basic principle, so that cooperating appropriately, giving and receiving feedback, sharing the so-called end product, these are also creative skills. According to OECD, creativity is the ability to produce work that is both novel and appropriate. So this is about new and interesting combinations, about getting at ease with unusual and daring ideas. And this is a kind of other part, the critical thinking, which is the ability to carefully evaluate and judge statements, ideas, and theories. So it is about thinking rationally and in a certain disciplinary frame. Okay, there is a kind of missing something, but okay. So in a school, if we support creative thinking, then the teaching and learning becomes more engaging and memorable. And the connection of learning is with a real problem, even if fictional, and develops problem-solving skills, stronger intellectual experiences. And of course, critical thinking develops inquiry and evaluation skills in learning, and develops problem-solving skills as well. OECD developed a framework or a rubric for creativity, and it is a scaffolding rubric for teachers. It has 2 aims. The first aim is to develop lesson plans, and the second is to assess the work and the processes in the classroom. So I absolutely suggest to use this type of frameworks because it supports a lot. For example, if we would like to support reflection in children, then we can create such activities, develop activities which reflect on the novelty of solution and of its possible consequences, and also reflect on the chosen solution position relative to possible alternatives. This is really important that PISA measurements showed that creativity is a domain-specific competence, and that's why there are series of domain-specific versions of these planning rubrics. For example, for science, for literacy, for music, for many other topics as well, or territories. And also the assessment rubrics you can find for creative thinking and also for critical thinking, which shows the different levels. There is a huge discussion still on about this assessment rubric, because the question is that is it valid for all types of cultures? Is it valid for all types of schools? Is it valid for all types of regions? So this is a discussion which is an open discussion still, but somehow shows that how teachers and educators can create their own frameworks and own rubrics for different grades and years as well. And I think this can be a really good approach to do that. I would say that fostering creativity or critical thinking requires appropriate tasks and assignments. It can be learned in any discipline alongside technical subject-related skills, and teachers have to prepare courses with a strong structure and learning architecture, but allow for some student agency, of course. How a policy can support this type of approach or work? There was last year there was a kind of survey among policymakers that what kind of obstacles they see, and the overcrowded curriculum was the leading issue, but also the question of a lack of assessment, focus on creativity, lack of teacher training or pedagogical resources to develop student creativity, lack of appropriate facilities, equipment, and materials. But I think if we try to focus on these lessons or these ideas, then somehow a kind of systematic change can happen. If we are explicit in our education policy about the aims and the aim of being creative and aims of creativity, and we try to define what we are talking about with this international language, then we do the first steps. The next one is that we should integrate the creative thinking into the regular disciplinary curriculum, make it part of formal assessments and evaluations, create alignment and incentives at all levels of education, and make sure that school principals follow this too. What in brackets I would like to say that this is the most, I think this is the most difficult part. So we have to work very closely with school principals to go in a right manner and to support them very systematically. The next one is provide teachers with professional learning opportunities, provide with scaffolding tools, create and support international and domestic communities of practice, and monitor and evaluate the effects and impacts. we can rely on the results of the PISA assessment, and the next report will be published in November or late October about the second analysis of these data. So PISA was focusing on 4 fields: the written expression, the visual expression, social problem solving, and scientific problem solving. And first, it was about ranking. Okay, I have 2 more slides. The first one is what I wanted to say, that so this was about ranking, and this is obvious that I hope that I will be able to show you this ranking figure, because those countries who had the best results, okay, yes, this one. Thank you. So that those countries who had the best results in creative thinking, nearly all of them, they have creative thinking and learning in the curriculum, in the national curriculum, and also in the national assessment systems. So this is really important to integrate this idea into the curriculum and also into the assessment system of the countries. And that's why Singapore, Korea, or Canada, Australia, New Zealand, this topic is absolutely built in the curriculum. If we do that, then we can come to the final stage when in our interviews done with teachers, this is always the sentence which we hear, that I had no idea my children can or could do that. And this is the perspective artists can bring into the classroom, and art education can support this type of experience of the teachers. I think that this new perspective and new experiences can emerge in all levels of education, starting from the classroom until the education system. So thank you very much for your attention, and we are waiting for your questions, Vitke. Thank you.